Lab and pathology services often average only 3% of hospital and health system cost. Big surprise, the data they carry contributes to 70% of all actionable EHR information. Open your ears and remember the name Viewics, an emerging HIT company that is taking this segment out of the shadows and onto everyone's radar. With us today is Dr. Eleanor Herriman, a powerhouse healthcare maverick and CMIO at Viewics. This company is leveraging lab data in amazing ways at such large client organizations as the Mayo Clinic. They're growing, and she's with us here on Red Hot Healthcare. Let's go.
3 alarm at 21 and north. All engines respond.
This is Red Hot Healthcare. Interviews with today's leaders and all the news that matters. Here's your host, Steve Ambrose.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Steve Ambrose, and you can subscribe to Red Hot Healthcare on iTunes, Stitcher, and other podcast directories. And we love to hear from you. Just send your comments or questions to steve@redhothealthcare.com or hit me up on my Twitter handle, PolymathSteve. Dr. Eleanor Herriman is the Chief Medical Informatics Officer at Viewics, a physician executive with 20 years of health sector experience in informatics, molecular diagnostics, medical devices, and healthcare policy and reform. She's worked with renowned strategist Michael Porter at Harvard Business School, developed next-generation laboratory business models, and consulted on healthcare strategy for Bain & Company. Dr. Herriman has been through multiple medical technology companies in early stage and played a key role in taking an artificial intelligence cancer screening startup from ground floor to going public. Eleanor, it's great to have you with us today. Welcome aboard Red Hot Healthcare.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for the invitation. I'm very excited to be here and to talk to everyone about Viewics and, in particular, the power of lab data. It's a fascinating story.
Yeah, the company's got a great story. I'm glad to have you aboard, and I know our audience is going to get a lot out of this. Let's just jump right in if we could, Eleanor. Viewics is a high-tech company with a really powerful technology. So in just a few high-level sentences, could you please explain what problems the solution that Viewics has solves?
Sure. So Viewics' specialty really at its base is being able to take diverse sources of lab data, and they are quite diverse, and cleanse it and transform them so that they can be integrated, and then layer on analytic solutions on top of this platform. It's actually a very hard thing to do because of the diversity of the types of lab data and the terminology, et cetera. In addition, clients don't have to use much of their own IT resources, which is very critical these days. And the lab analytics that we provide are easy to use, easy to distribute, and easy to customize.
You talked with me off air about your technology and how you're leveraging that small amount of cost that labs and pathology generate to a hospital or health system and the data that you can glean from that. The biggest reason you chose this technology and to focus it on labs was because you thought it could make a bigger difference to the overall picture?
That's correct, Steve. There have been a number of studies that have shown that although laboratory testing comprises about 3% of healthcare costs, it drives 70% approximately of clinical decision making. There's really an underappreciation of this fact. There's an underappreciation of the true clinical value of lab data. So some of the characteristics that make laboratory data Particularly important are the fact that it's ubiquitous. Lab tests are done all the time by all types of providers in all settings. If you're trying to do predictive analytics, predict risk, predict outcomes, etc., lab data is among the top of the types of sources of data that has power for predicting. And finally, lab data and pathology data are at the center of personalized medicine, which, as your listeners probably know, is where healthcare is going. That laboratory data is ripe for being made useful through analytics and disseminated through the clinical and healthcare systems in a way that it can drive clinical and operational value.
And yet it seems to be a conclusion. It seems to be a necessary tie-in that has gone missed just for quite a long time.
Yeah, that's right. There's a number of reasons for it. I mean, it has been traditionally seen, the laboratory, as a cost center. Under DRGs, you don't get paid for it essentially at all, and a commodity in a way, right? As long as the lab is running efficiently and there's not severe quality problems, and that's all that's expected. And in addition, now that we've gone to electronic records and digitization, it's difficult to harness that power if you can't do the kind of integration that Viewics can. So for all those reasons, and just the overall mindset of that commoditization, it really has not been appreciated.
From your website, I took a quote here. Viewics extracts data from all of your existing platforms and unites them into a singular view of all your insights. So you have a complete and integrated picture of all the information leading to more informed decision-making. Is the product that they offer a singular product for electronic health records throughout the health organization, or is it just within the lab pathology services unit, or are there other products that you offer?
We offer a suite of products, Steve. The company began with products for the laboratory, involving things like laboratory efficiency, laboratory quality, what's called laboratory test utilization management. Now, utilization management does go out to the clinicians and to the EMR, but we've expanded our products now to areas which use, again, that lab data, but they are directly touching clinicians. So, for instance, blood management programs where you're restricting transfusions. Those are going to go across the health system to surgeons, anesthesia, changing behavior of those physicians and using those analytics that we're developing to change that behavior. So it's a mix. It depends on the product. And another point that I want to make is that we have some laboratory products that involve, besides utilization management, what's called outreach, which is when a hospital or health system laboratory actually acts as a reference lab. And that switches that laboratory from a cost center to a revenue center. And a lot of people don't realize how very powerful financially these outreach labs can be. One example is Mayo Health System. Mayo's MML reference lab comprises almost a third of all of Mayo Health System's profits. So there's that as well, that even though labs are underappreciated and all, there are these examples of these outreach labs, and we have a product for improving outreach in your laboratory that you could say impacts the rest of the health system because it contributes so much to their profits.
Eleanor, I'm blown away. I can't believe 33% of the profit that comes into Mayo Health System comes from their outreach lab. I mean, is that right?
That's exactly what we've been told by them.
Goodness.
Yes.
It's almost like you've just opened up a Christmas present when you're talking about using the lab data, and it can just go in so many places. I suppose your system also has a big effect on population health management as well, no?
Absolutely. There's a number of examples. A study I did where we looked at bundling, which is, of course, as you know, one of the big areas of value-based purchasing. Mm-hmm. And I analyzed and researched how laboratory services, so beyond just laboratory analytics with the test, could impact these bundles by improving outcomes. And estimated that about a third, 30% actually, could come from the lab analytics side. So there's, as you said, it's because it's ubiquitous and potent and drives so many decisions that there are numerous opportunities to apply it.
And now a few words from your host. This show's a big part of my life, but my full-time effort is spent in healthcare engagement. And I'm not talking about online portals or some new mHealth app. I'm striving for community trust, growing patient referrals, increasing enrollment, improving adherence, and yes, making sure that the technology you use works with patients. Not because of the technology, but because of the blend between that technology, your company strategy, underlying culture, and that your community knows you're truly on their side. And health technology companies, it's your responsibility too, because providers will start expecting better design, function, lower cost, and even advisory services to help with their results. I'm Steve Ambrose, a surprise you don't see coming. I work with health service providers and IT companies who are not looking solely to manage by numbers or in yesterday's non-engaging models. If you'd like to speak with me, email steveambroseucla@gmail.com. You may also learn more by visiting the About Steve page on redhothealthcare.com. Now you know, and we're back to our show in 3, 2, 1. You worked with Michael Porter at Harvard, and then I believe you worked at G2 Intelligence. Why did you decide to make the jump from what had been certainly a very successful career in consulting, strategic consulting, to working with Viewics?
Steve, the reason was that through my work, it became clear to me that this laboratory data and analytics opportunity was there, clearly there. And by opportunity, I mean it was an opportunity that was not being pursued, let's put it that way, and that it had this tremendous value. And in my mind, it was actually something that really needed to be pursued by a venture company, not a big corporation or anything like that. So it became a mission of mine, if you will, and a vision of mine. And when I met the people at Viewics, I saw that they had a technology platform that was sophisticated and powerful enough that it could support these type of analytics, and that they too wanted to go in the direction of clinical, of applying the lab data to clinical. I basically saw coming to Viewics as a way to fulfill that mission, pursue that vision, and it was a natural next step for me.
I know that you have some technology based around ETL that offers some competitive differentiation. So ETL, just for those in our audience that don't know, serves as a basis for creating a data warehouse or a data lake. Maybe you can talk about the ETL technology that you all use and how that affects the strategy of Viewics.
So ETL, which is extract, transform, and load, is the technical process by which one can take diverse data sources and, as you said, build them into a data warehouse or a data lake. It is actually not trivial, not easy. Laboratories, as I mentioned before, they have silos. A lab is not just one lab. There's microbiology, there's chemistry, there's molecular diagnostics, there's pathology, et cetera. Worse than that, across labs and even within labs, there is diversity in coding and terminology. Trying to integrate and create that data warehouse or data lake requires some very sophisticated technology. We have spent the last 6 years building what's called connectors and what's called computer agents for different systems that we now are very familiar with in the lab space. This is so important because a lot of CIOs have actually thrown up their hands when it got to the lab. It was too difficult. Some of our competitors don't really have a good way to do this either, the ETL for labs. So, and by the way, we not only can we do it for labs, we also can bring in billing data, pull from EMRs, pharmaceutical data. In fact, the lab is one of the hardest. But once we start with the lab, some of our clients, we've been pulling in all sorts of other data sources, but adding to the lab. But we start with that lab.
I went back and did a little research on some of the papers you've written in the past, and what I like is where people hit them where they ain't. I like lateral thinking. I like disruptive thinking as well. And one of the things I found very interesting was in a world where everybody seems to have been talking about waste and overutilization, and that happens certainly in lab services, or it has up till now. You talk about the dangers of underutilization and being sometimes worse than overutilization. Can you go ahead and explain that a bit further to our audience?
Overutilization of lab testing is mainly aiming at decreasing the costs of lab testing. So those costs, those lab costs overall, are only about 3% of healthcare costs. So even though it is important, there are important reasons to reduce that overutilization, it's not going to get as much attention from health system C-suite as other initiatives might, because the needle is not moving quite as much. Now, in contrast, underutilization, that represents cases in which a clinician failed to order a test that was in fact clinically indicated. That can have some very serious consequences. Those consequences can include a misdiagnosis, unnecessary follow-up work, which can sometimes be invasive, unnecessary or even incorrect treatment, prolonged hospital stays, increased morbidity, and even increased mortality. And by the way, of course, all of those consequences, as you might imagine, contribute to significant downstream healthcare costs.
Yeah.
And again, that's what comprises the majority of the healthcare pie. So you compare the two, and you see that not only is the needle much higher on the cost aside for the underutilization, but also are the clinical outcomes.
I know that Viewics has just raised a little more than $12 million. That's between seed and Series A rounds. But you just received an additional Series B for another $10.5 million on top of that. Why did Viewics need this Series B round, and maybe how do you plan to use the investment?
This is an enormous market opportunity. We need resources to first scale up our sales and marketing to reach all the places in the market that we need to. Secondly, we have found that in vitro diagnostic companies, the large ones like Roche, Siemens, et cetera, are coming to us and really see a significant strategic need for adding analytics to their products and actually see us as the vendor of choice for that, which means that we have an additional need to expand our sales and marketing, go to marketing, if you will, to a whole different market sector. So we needed the resources for that as well. And then the other point is, as we go more clinically, you can't rely on the lab people alone to lead the charge. You kind of have to partner with them and together go to the C-suite. So it was a mix of things, a lot having to do with go-to-market and the fact that we have a diverse set of approaches there that need to be filled.
Eleanor Herriman, CMIO of Viewics, thanks for being with us today on the show.
Thanks, Steve. I enjoyed it.
You've been listening to Red Hot Healthcare with Steve Ambrose. Subscribe to us on most major podcast directories. For media or business inquiries, reach out to media@redhothealthcare.com. Thanks for listening. This is Denny Colonna. We're out of here.